Welcome to ChemOrbis. In this session, we will cover the latest developments of PE market in Europe. We will start with a general outlook on supply-demand, have a close look at prices, and also analyze the margins and compare the Europe prices with the China prices. To start with, I will access to the latest report published on PE for Northwest Europe. Publication date is 19th of October, and during this week the price ranges reported are the following: 1260 to 1330 euro per ton for LDPE, 1180 1270 for LLDPE, 1120 1240 for HDPE film and blow molding, and 1120 1200 for HDPE injection. On the right hand side of the report, you find a column related to feedstock and monomers, where you can find for the last 5 weeks the average spot market price for oil and naphtha, and below for ethylene. You can see the ethylene price, spot market price average for Far East, US and Europe. Going back to the general outlook, it seems that the supply is quite ample, having also some imports competitive, and the demand is stable to weaker, and therefore the buyers are starting to slow down in advance of a November stable to softer trend. This analysis is supported also by the spot monomer contract price comparison. If here we can look at the monomer spot market price, which was higher at the beginning of the month, and now it is reported at 20 and 10.25, which is basically equivalent to the last October contract market price for ethylene. Actually, looking at a price wizard, an analytical tool, very powerful, we can compare the last 52 weeks spot monomer price ethylene for the 3 areas: Far East, Northwest Europe and US. You can see the US is very lower, much lower, and Asia and Europe are quite stable but at a much higher level, just above the 1000 euro per ton. Using still the price wizard, I have put on the same graph for the last 52 weeks the prices for HDPE, blow molding, film, injection, and LDPE and LLDPE. And you can see that in the last part of 2016 prices were at the minimum, started to grow until mid of March, started to go down. They hit minimum around the mid of July, and then they started to grow until now. Actually, it seems that the decrease is already in place at the beginning of October as an average spot market price. Looking at this graph, the higher, most expensive grade looks LDPE, and the cheapest grade is HDPE injection. To see prices at global level, we can use another analytical tool called Product Snapshot. In this table, basically, we can see the week selected price for the feedstock and monomers and the polymers, each grade that we basically report in all regions. We don't have time to go through each grade and all regions because the list is very long, as you can see. But the table is very interesting because with a glance you know what is the short-term trend versus previous week, and you can see the volatility range and where we stand this week within the volatility range. It's very interesting tool. In some regions you see we are close to the minimum. In some others like Europe, for example, we are more towards the middle of the volatility range. An interesting analysis you can make is also looking at the margins, theoretical margins, by plotting in a chart the price for a polymer, in this case the LLDPE C4, versus the ethylene market average weekly spot price. So you can see that we can show the difference, still the 52 weeks period, and towards the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, the margins were quite healthy for the producers, whereas they are much more compressed in this period. The meaning of this graph means that basically the producer have more or less pressure on their margins, and consequently they have more or less flexibility in their pricing strategies. In this graph instead I plotted the price of LLDPE C4 in Europe and in China. China is important because it's a reference market. What happens in China will happen eventually after a few weeks also in Europe. So in this case the interesting part is that China touched a maximum on the beginning of September, and then it started to decrease. But more interestingly, and the same is happening in Europe, as you can see, since 2 or 3 weeks. But interestingly, after their holidays break, in China prices started to go up. It happened first with HDPE, but now it's happening also on the other grades. So if we see this trend, it means that November and December for PE are going to be interesting months also for European, where a clear trend is not yet set. So with that I have finished. If you have any interest to run your free trial on ChemOrbis, or know what are the incentives available for your subscription, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you for your attention.